So how many years have you been in the studio again?
In this studio since 2011.
2011.
And we started doing the show in, I think, 2009.
Sounds about right.
And just as everything was cratering.
Right.
And so the show had instant success. Because everybody wanted to know, what's going on? What's going on? We're all dying.
But you've been doing a show since like the 90s.
Well, for the TV show, we're in our
Right.
21st year now.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, which is pretty good because TV shows usually don't last over 20 years. They don't last beyond a few in most cases.
Yeah. Yeah,
But,
it is an accomplishment.
we've got a niche, you know. We found a niche nobody else is doing.
Well, there are a few things to talk about these days, too.
Man, just this week.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's, look, and I'm sure these guys would echo it. For being in the media, this is the best time to ever be covering the automotive industry.
I can imagine.
It is unreal.
Yeah, it's exciting times.
It really is.
There's a video I posted on one of the sites that I write for today, and it was 60 Minutes, Morley Safer from 60 Minutes, covering Lamborghini in 1987, and like David E. Davis is in there, and Malcolm Ford. It was just such a like oh my God, it used to be that way, and just how different it is today.
It's like uncovering a new pyramid or something in Egypt.
Yeah.
It's that old.
Malcolm Ford, yeah, because they were talking about the Countach that he had, and he would drive it in Manhattan to work and stuff like that. Yeah, it was crazy. It's up on Hooniverse.com if you want to see it. So.
Oh, that'd be fun. Watch Autoline After Hours live at Autoline.tv every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific. You can subscribe to this podcast for free by searching for Autoline in iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, your journey, our passion. Lear, a global leader in automotive seating and electrical systems. And by Borg Warner, propulsion solutions that support a clean, energy-efficient world.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Autoline After Hours. My co-host, Gary Vaslash, is not here today. He's out on the West Coast driving the new Ford Explorer. In fact, by the time he gets back on the show again, we'll probably be able to talk a whole lot more about it. But you can tune into Autoline Daily to get some more details coming shortly there. But we've got a packed show today. We got a lot to cover. We're going to be diving into the automotive collision repair business on the first half of the show. And then we've also got Joe McCabe coming in from AutoForecast Solutions. He'll give us some of his viewpoints about where this whole auto industry is going. But let's get started with today's show. And I got to introduce my journalist panel, starting with Steve Finlay from Ward's Auto. And Steve, it's always great to have
Thank
you
you,
here.
John.
You've been on the show before, so you know the drill. But Eric Trytko is a name that maybe some haven't heard. And Eric, I got you down at a company called I Am at CS. Is that right?
The short name for it is IMAX, and it's Interactive Marketing and Consulting. We're a full-service digital agency that works with car dealers for content. I'm the director of content and social media, but we also do consulting for the sales, BDC building, pretty much, and pay-per-clicks and the whole Google Analytics. And
But you're a motorsport broadcaster guy as well.
Yes, among that, and been writing for 20 years about cars and motorcycles as well, so yes.
Especially motorcycles, right?
Love motorcycles. Love motorcycles, nothing better.
You know,
What is the collision repair business?
and that's a great segue, Steve, to introduce our special guest for the first half, Stacey Wesselink from iCar.
Hi.
Stacey, great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Okay, for those who have never heard of iCar, what is it?
So iCar is an international not-for-profit that's focused on creating collision repair training for the collision repair aftermarket and the technicians.
Yeah, and go into a little bit more detail, you know, training in what way?
So from the beginning of iCar's foundation, which really we were created by the collision repair industry for the collision repair industry, and our focus has been on equipping that technician with the right knowledge to repair a consumer's vehicle. So that way the driving public when they get back into their car after an accident, then they can be assured that they've had a complete, safe, and quality repair.
Cool. Now, and you guys got some new things that you want to talk to us about.
Yeah.
Why don't you get into that?
Yeah, there's actually a lot of really great things happening at iCar right now, but what I want to talk about today is BodyShopology. So,
BodyShopology.
it's a fun name, isn't it?
What's that mean?
Well, BodyShopology is iCar's consumer initiative, and this is us really taking an opportunity to elevate the conversation with the consumer about the importance of connecting that consumer with a trained and credentialed body shop, so that way when they do get their car repaired, they know they are working with a body shop that has the right type of training.
Let's go into that a bit more. Cars used to be made primarily from cold-rolled steel. Now there's all different kinds of materials. So I got to believe if you get in an accident, you better make sure that the thing's been fixed right.
Yeah, and unfortunately today the challenge really is that about 65% of shops today are not trained. And so if you or I get in an accident and we have to go find our neighborhood collision repairer, there's a good chance that 2 out of 3 of them don't have the training necessary. And so that becomes a real challenge when iCar's focused on keeping that consumer safe. We have to close the gap in that training, and that's really our core mission.
Well, what's the biggest problem in terms of working with multiple materials?
So iCar is really focused on not only the training, but encouraging and advocating that every collision repair shop uses OEM repair procedures. And truthfully, if you deviate from those today, it could really cause catastrophic results for the consumer, and it could put their lives at risk.
Are you focused more on the independent shops or working with the dealer repair shops as well?
So for BodyShopology and really kind of elevating that conversation with the consumer, we have every type of body shop available on our locator. So MSOs, independents, dealers, you can find all of them. And actually, what's really neat about BodyShopology is when you go to the locator and you type in a zip code, you're going to get a whole list of shops in your area.
And here we've got a screen up
there we go.
showing how it all works.
And so it's going to give you a list right away of shops that have a level of training recognized as what we call gold class. And gold class in the collision repair world is that industry standard of training. And so when a consumer goes to that site and they see that gold class logo, they know that that shop has had relevant training. But when they also go there, they can take a look at some other options that are going to be of interest to them. So things like their vehicle maker. They may have, their automaker may have a certification program that they want to look into. They may have an insurance program. And so this really gives the consumer, puts them in the seat, really, to be able to pick a collision repair shop that's for their specific vehicle and their unique needs.
Now, I would just think that insurance companies would want to be all over this, that making sure that this gets repaired right, or is that not the case?
So we're really in the early phase of the launch of BodyShopology. We've just really rolled this out. So right at the starting line, we've already had tremendous interest. So we're working with insurance companies right now to get their participation. We're working with OEMs. Right now we have Ford and Farmers. They're the first 2 that have begun being populated in the locator, and we know that many more are going to participate really soon.
Well, just back to John's question about the multiple materials. It used to be steel, and people were used to that. Now you're talking about aluminum. You're talking about adhesives that put the 2 different materials together. What is the impact on the collision repair industry? Is it harder to fix a vehicle under those circumstances? I understand aluminum is difficult to work with sometimes because it can dent easily, and you have to handle it properly. What are the new skill sets required for the multiple materials?
So it's true whenever you look at today's advanced vehicles. I mean, take a vehicle that it's equipped with an ADAS system, right? And so the driver's side mirror gets knocked off. Well, on the surface, a consumer might think that that's a simple repair. But the reality is there could be cameras and sensors that need to be calibrated. And so finding a collision repair shop, if possible, that has the training for that vehicle, that specific vehicle, is really going to help that consumer have the proper repair.
What are the different levels of training for the different levels of certification for your gold, your platinum, your silvers?
So gold class is what's recognized by the consumer, and that's really what represents the shop's level of training. And what happens with a gold class recognition is that shop has to have role-relevant technicians, so they're in the shop trained on their specific role. And those techs that are train to what's called platinum. And that's really at the technician level, and that's recognizing a technician's level of training.
This is all for independent repair shops, or would it apply to car dealerships as well?
It applies to any body shop.
Oh, interesting.
Absolutely.
Does it skew more towards franchise dealers than independents, or vice versa, or not at all?
No, it doesn't really have a skew to it. It's really about creating that conversation with the consumer that they need to be looking at several factors when it comes to their repair process. So today, consumers, for the most part, this is what our consumer research says anyways, 59% of consumers really just take a referral. And so their level of research into that repair shop starts and stops there.
I'm just thinking that knowing dealers and knowing the OEM's expectations of dealers, it would seem that franchise dealers would be more interested in getting a gold status than maybe some small shop down the street.
Yeah, we realize, and one of the things that we really focus on from a messaging standpoint is that not every body shop is equal. And so being able to promote yourself as having that level of training to the consumer is certainly going to put you at the top of the list, especially when that consumer is looking at a whole list of different shops with different levels of training and credentials.
And are you working to get your branding out so that consumers recognize it and that dealerships can leverage off of that to go at consumers and use that as a differentiation for them?
Yeah, we have a multi-pronged strategy with getting that consumer engaged. I mean, the difficulty is, let's be real here, right? Nobody wants to think about their collision repair options.
No.
I mean, we get in an accident once every 7 to 11 years. And so when you get in an accident, it's really about finding that fastest solution. Many times, again, they will just take a referral from a friend or a family. So what we're trying to do is really engage the consumer in that moment when they need to make that decision and be able to present BodyShopology as an option for them so they can find the right repair choice.
What's the most common collision repair?
Oh, the most common collision repair. Well, as a marketing person, I probably know just enough to say something that sounds dangerous, but I'm probably not equipped to actually answer that.
We love having honest answers. I'm curious, how much do the OEMs support what you're doing? I mean, I would expect this. If I were an OEM, I would mandate this of my dealers.
I would think especially from the luxury brands as well, and they want to have the best experience for their customers.
Sure.
and to keep them coming back for that experience.
Well,
Right?
and when I say mandated, I would want that iCar gold standard at every one of my dealerships if I was a car company.
Yeah, we're really excited because iCar is really seeing an evolution in that OEM engagement. And today we have 18 different OEMs that do require some form of iCar training. We have 14 different major insurance carriers that do as well for their networks.
You know, on the topic of dealers and their fixed operations, not every dealer has a body shop.
That's correct.
But there has been a chronic shortage of auto technicians in the dealership world, and there has been as long as I can remember.
Sure.
And it's 20 years back. And it remains a serious issue of not being able to attract enough talented people to those jobs. Is there a similar chronic shortage in the collision repair industry?
Yeah, the skilled trades across the board are seeing a shortage of talent, and it's definitely no different in the collision repair space. And that's why training is so important for a body shop, so that they have that bench strength available to make those repairs whenever a car comes in.
Well, what do you do about it, though? I mean, how are you addressing the shortage?
So there's a few things that we do. One, we work with a collision repair education foundation, and they are really that arm out there helping to recruit new talent and interest into the collision repair industry. We work with career and technical schools. We actually have taken our entire professional curriculum and we've adopted it into a format that the schools can deliver. So we're working with them to continuously train new technicians that are coming into the industry.
How do I get this app? I mean, is it available for free, and how do I search for it?
So BodyShopology, the consumer initiative, really leverages the BodyShopology.com website. And on the website, you can go there, you can get an access to all kinds of information. As a consumer, you can get tips on how to interact with a collision repair shop, what kinds of questions to ask, things to look for. And then most importantly, you've got the zip code finder, and you can type in that zip code and immediately get results. It's free to the consumer, it's free to all of our network partners who want to participate, and it's free for the collision repair.
And for independent shops and dealerships that want to get involved with this, is there fees and costs for that, or is it just sign up and be associated with it?
Yeah, so we recognize the participating networks. So when a OEM or an insurance network is participating in BodyShopology, then all the shops in their network will automatically be populated on the locator, which today we have a little over 8,000 shops already.
Wow.
What type of questions should a consumer be asking of a body shop?
That's a great question. So obviously, we're talking a lot about training. So training is critically important. Does that shop have Gold Class? Do they have the vehicle's specific credential related to that owner's vehicle? Do they have an ASE certification? When's the last time their technicians had their welding certification? Especially if we're talking about a structural type of repair, that's incredibly important. You know, what's that process that the shop will take to take care of their vehicle? You know, do you have a level of confidence? Are there good reviews about that shop out there? And so price and location are important, but so are all of these other factors.
Hey, we're getting quite a few questions coming in from our audience right now. In fact, SCO Spray, Jeff Taylor from St. Louis, Missouri, and Lost in the Curve all have Tesla questions. and they're wondering if, I'm sort of paraphrasing them all three together because they're all asking about Tesla. Do you have any thoughts about the crazy repair times for Tesla, and is there any hope for improvement?
Well, obviously, again, coming from the marketing side of things, I probably can't comment on the repair times for Tesla, but we are actively working with many OEMs in their participation. And so I would imagine that we'll have more of that type of information available on BodyShopology soon.
Well, you wonder if the repair times are associated with the inexperience of the staff repairing them or the difficulty of the product to be repaired.
And what I'm seeing is, or at least is, TFL Cars, the Fast Lane, they have a Model 3 that they bought because they wanted to test it for an extended period of time. And like a month after they got it, they backed it into something, and they are 60 days now of trying to get it repaired at well over $11,000, including you have to take the glass roof off to repair the quarter panels. That's a whole separate issue. But the point being is that because of their production ways at Tesla, things come in onesies and twosies. They don't have a stack of parts to send to the independent stores, and so things will come in here, but then they're still waiting on other things that take another 3 weeks. So just look at Fastlane Cars on YouTube, and you can see all about it. It's pretty interesting.
Maybe we need to send them a link to BodyShopology. Right. Well, let's see. What else is there? Fred Steining says, what % of car mechanics are female? Any idea on that?
Oh, goodness.
Do you guys got
Not
any idea?
enough?
Not enough. I mean,
Yeah, I would be guessing.
there's not enough
There's
techs
been an
anyway.
initiative
Yeah.
to
Right.
recruit more, but it's difficult to get
Anybody.
So, you know, the field's pretty open for people that are interested. It's also a question of you know, I'm not sure how much collision techs earn, but, you know, auto techs, like repairing vehicles, you know, not collisions, but, you know, things that go wrong, they earn a lot of money. And one of the efforts to recruit the technicians is to let the world know, especially students who are making career decisions and their parents who are making decisions with them and influencing them, how much money you can make in some of these jobs, because the parents often are trying to talk the kid out of it, thinking, oh, you know, it's a low-paying job, and, you know, it's doesn't have the status that it, you know, if you went somewhere else. And so the effort on the part of the recruiters or the people that are trying to get more people into this industry is to get to the parents as well as the kid. Because parents, you know, if they say, you know, go clean your room, the kid will say no, or give some pushback. But if the parent is offering career advice, the kids listen to the parents then. So there's the effort to reach both rather than just one.
And I think we're finally coming full circle on this whole deal with skilled trades because of the ups and downs of the economy and other things going on. People with skilled trades can always find work, whether it's with a business or with side jobs all the time. And as someone who grew up as, my whole family was members of the UAW, and my grandfather was a tool and die guy. Like skilled trades are a good, honest thing, and you make good amounts of money. Like a boiler tech at one of the big three makes well over $100,000 a year. I'm like, where was this knowledge for me when I was going to college spending money? But yeah, I think that's great, and the more we can recruit people to any kind of skilled trades right now, because everything's got to be fixed at some point, right?
Yeah, I'm sure you run into this issue too at ICAR all the time.
Yeah, the talent shortage is definitely something that collision repairers of all sizes are trying to face and tackle right now.
Stacey, we got another question here. I love this handle, Joey's Cleaning Lady. But he's got a good question here. Where do you get your methodologies from? How do you develop your repair methodologies?
So ICAR works very closely with the industry. So like I said earlier, ICAR was made by the industry for the industry. And so as we look at developing curriculum, we're continuously engaged with the automakers, the insurance industry, the collision repairers themselves. We have ongoing curriculum refreshments that we do every 4 to 5 years. And so we continuously stay current with relevant training.
How much, sorry, and to go into that, is there starting to be a push now with sort of the virtual reality, augmented reality in training techs with, put the glasses on and you can kind of see how things go together, how the process in which they're supposed to be done?
Yeah, the way people are really consuming all type of learning has evolved so much. I mean, and we see it not only within the training that we deliver, but you see it at all ages. It starts as young as kindergarten these days. Kids are, doing their homework on iPads. And so really we're seeing a level of technology interaction that we're really having to meet those needs. And so it's virtual training, it's online training, but then we can't forget the need to still sit down in a shop and get your hands dirty and learn the right skills. And we're in the shop training as well.
If there's a collision and it does affect some of the advanced technology, like the LiDAR and stuff like that, how is that repaired? Is that repaired in the collision shop, or does somebody else come in that specializes in that sort of thing?
So in terms of the repair process, I'm sure there's different shops are going to have different skill sets, right? And so depending on the resources and the equipment of a body shop, they may be doing that in-house, they may be subletting that out. But regardless, what we're looking at least in terms of trying to educate the consumer, is does that body shop really have the right training, and are they using the right partners?
And that's critical, the issues that you guys are raising here, because, to your point, Steve, there's cameras, there's radar, there's sonar. Soon there's going to be LiDAR. And if you bend the car a little bit and the sensor's pointing this way instead of that way, it's a big issue.
Sure is.
And you need all new equipment to be able to dial that in and make sure that it's done right.
And recalibrate it and the whole works.
Exactly right.
A fender bender can become a major issue.
Yeah, just look at we'll use Tesla as an example, but they've got the cameras on the sides now, and a couple other cars are doing that and all over. Yeah, I just can't imagine trying to realign all of that with, lasers. I mean, it makes laser alignment for your tires look like child's play at that point, right?
Yeah, training really is no longer a luxury. It's a necessity.
Yeah. We've got more questions coming in here. Brett S. from Madison, Wisconsin wants to know, can you share any data on the relative cost difference in body repairs of an aluminum F-150 versus, say, like a steel Chevy Silverado? He says he's hearing that there's quite a bit of difference in cost. I don't know if that's just the materials or, just the level of training that's out there, too.
Well, so cost is always going to be an incredibly important factor for any consumer when they need to get their vehicle repaired. And so if you're working with something like Ford, for example, Ford has a dedicated repair network that's trained just to repair that particular vehicle. So when you go on to BodyShopology.com, you'll actually see Ford. You can select their repair network specifically for a 2015 F-150 or later, and you can find the shops that have that training. And those are the shops that are going to have the most efficient repair process because they've been trained to repair that vehicle.
Well, the insurance company is paying for most of the cost, with the exception maybe the deductible. How invested, or I mean, how interested is the consumer interest, you know, what is the consumer interest in the cost of repair if the insurance company is paying for it?
So, you know, from our perspective, we recognize that that cost factor is really important, but what we're trying to do is elevate that conversation to that next level and to say, yeah, cost is something that we can't forget about, and you need to work with your insurance companies. But in addition to that, we also want you to think about that collision repair training and that credential and finding that shop that meets your needs, because all of those factors are going to be important.
So the idea is that it's done when you get your car back. It's not going back a week later because something wasn't right or something wasn't fixed. And I can speak to this when my wife's Saab was sideswiped a number of years ago. It went back like 3 times because it was like there was always something that wasn't fixed right.
Well, and that's a really good point, because when we own a vehicle, a lot of times we're not the last owner. And so whenever you have a vehicle repaired, you want to not only make sure it's repaired properly for you and your family, but for any future owner that may actually have that vehicle. And it makes me think of a kind of a moment when I started iCar that was really kind of one of those wow moments. You know, before I started iCar, I would say that I was not a well-informed consumer at all. And I owned a pre-owned vehicle, and I knew it had been in an accident before, and unfortunately I got in an accident with it, and it was a pretty significant accident. I got veered off the road, cut off, hit a ravine doing 40, and we tumbled.
Whoa. Big time accident.
I had my family in the car, my 14-month-old son, and we landed on a roof. And I will tell you what, we walked away from that accident without a scratch. Now, because of that, and I'm not going to say the make and model of the vehicle, but because of that, I've had a level of loyalty to that brand, and I have not purchased another vehicle outside of that brand since then, because in my mind, as an uninformed consumer at that point, I saw that brand as protecting me. Now you fast forward and I join iCar and I become the informed consumer, and I am so thankful because I had that aha moment where, you mean there are shops that aren't trained to repair my vehicle? But there are hairdressers that have to have a license to cut my hair? Like, this just didn't make sense for me.
That's a great point.
And so it really opened up my eyes, and because now I can look at that experience and just be so grateful that, you know, whoever had repaired that vehicle before I owned it did the right thing. The structural integrity of that car was maintained, and my family walked away without a scratch. We had some whiplash for a few days, but on the flip side, had we been injured, my association and my loyalty to that brand would have been very different.
What happened to the car? Was it
It
totaled?
was totaled.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. So, you know, looking at, and to your point earlier, right, looking at the importance of training, not only for the consumer, which is incredibly important, we're all interested in that, but think about that loyalty then that it creates for the automaker to know that the vehicle that their consumer is going to buy, if it's repaired correctly, it creates a long-lasting relationship.
Great point. Great point. Hey, we're probably going to have to wrap this up right now, but to your last point there, Robert Karma wrote in to say, auto techs have complicated jobs now since our vehicles are so packed with electronics and computers. No shade tree mechanics anymore. and it's especially true when it comes to body repair.
Absolutely. When you have 270 million cars out there and 11 million accidents, having 65% of those body shops not trained is just, it's unacceptable.
I'm going to go search for that app, BodyShopology. And what is it, BodyShopology.com is how I should search for it? Or?
Yep, so you can find us on the web at BodyShopology.com. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook.
Good deal. Well, with that, we're going to wrap it up. But Stacey Wesselink, thanks so much for coming on. And,
Thank you very much for having me.
Very interesting. I mean, none of us want to have to use your app,
Right.
But it's brilliant to know that it's out there to go to the right place to get any car fixed.
Yeah.
I'll just say real quick, I've seen so many accidents lately. You know, I feel I'm jinxed, you know, like, am I next? You mentioned, oh, we get in an accident every 7 to 10 years. You're like, okay, when was the last time I got in an accident?
I don't think we do that.
How much time do I have?
Right, exactly.
Good deal. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back. We've got Joe McCabe from AutoForecast Solutions who will be joining us.
Lear Connexus offers a parental controls application with geofencing that sends notifications regarding driving behavior and location, including curfew alerts, acceleration alerts, and speed alerts. All delivered to a smartphone application that includes vehicle location, driver notifications, and a report card of driving history, including notifications when predefined geographic boundaries are crossed. For more information, visit Lear.com.
The world is changing at an ever-increasing pace. No matter what the mode of transportation, there is always the need for an efficient propulsion system. And that's exactly what BorgWarner has been doing since the earliest days of the automotive industry. We create innovative mobility technologies that reduce energy consumption and emissions while improving performance. Our proven track record has made us an industry leader in forward-looking propulsion solutions for combustion, hybrid, and electric vehicles.
We're back. And we got Joe McCabe on the
On the stand.
We can't bring that tape back and start again, so I'm going to just start again. We've got Joe McCabe from AutoForecast
guys.
Solutions in the studio with us right now.
Hey, thanks for having
Put
me.
your hand on the bottom.
That's great. Good start.
So tell the audience snapshot real quick. What is AutoForecast Solutions?
So we do global vehicle, powertrain, drivetrain forecasting for the whole world, 8 years. Who builds what, where, when, how many. Update every month. Actuals, weekly updates, what's coming out. But more importantly, we have a software solution that lets them take it to the next level. Data has become flat and commoditized, where people say, I'm looking at 65,000 records, so what? And we give them the so what. All my guys have 25 years experience, so they could say, look, I got an RFQ in hand telling me BMW wants 500,000 seats. You're telling me 250,000 vehicles. Why? And capacity, geopolitical issues, demographics, portfolio mix, whatever it is. It's our job to help our customers, mostly suppliers and jurisdictions. How do we become better, more proactive in this? Everyone's reactive in this industry, right? They all wait for something to come up, and they're not as proactive as they should be, and we become their outsourced planning solution for that point.
Okay, well, here's a problem that the industry is grappling with. I'm wondering what you're telling your clients. Everyone's got to invest in their core internal combustion engines.
Yeah.
They got to build trucks, they got to build SUVs, they got to build the stuff that's making
Right.
profits. Meanwhile, the governments all around the world are saying, you guys got to build battery electric vehicles. You got to have plug-in hybrids. You got to maybe even go into fuel cells. So what do? You got to pour the money into what's making money.
Yeah.
But you also got to put it into the new stuff, and there's got to be a delicate balancing act, and it's got to vary by region. What are you telling your clients about this?
So I tell them that our job is to really say you have two major issues. How do you defend your core and still invest in the future? And you can't put all of your eggs in one of those baskets. You have to spread it out. So history is not always an indicator of future returns, but I give a couple examples of GM wanting 1 million fuel cells on a road by 2014, and they just missed it by about 1 million units. And that's fine, but there was a lot of issues. There were consumers thinking they were driving a hydrogen bomb, right? Which is not true, but there's a lot of optics issues, infrastructure issues, cost structures. And we are very conservative on the electrification front. We don't necessarily believe it's the end-all, be-all. It is a solution, not the solution. And when you have areas that are using a stick approach, Germany, France, China, then people are going to be forced. But I still find out there's two issues. There's a shareholder value. These companies have to make money. And there's consumer acceptance. You can't just, it's not Field of Dreams. You can't just build it and they'll show up.
Right.
And it's very difficult to convince a consumer, especially in the United States, we'll be last of the game at $2.50 a gallon to go spend $10,000 premium price on an electrified vehicle, and in their mind there's perceived range and other issues that say, well, don't take that right away from me. I want to go to any gas station I want. Now there's a lot of misconceptions on the strength of electrification. I don't think lithium ion's the end-all be-all. Solid state may be a good thing. Inductive charging, even though it's slow, may be a good thing. But you got to start taking barriers away. It's a generational shift.
Well, I'm not sure that that's a perception. Range anxiety is real. And I'm all for EVs. I think they're the future and they're very cool. But, getting back to what you said originally, the idea that, the manufacturer says, we want you to tool up for 500,000 units, and the suppliers thinking, are they actually going to hit that?
That's why they hired Joe.
Yeah, well, in the old days, it was like, okay, the manufacturers like jump and the suppliers like how high. And there's been an evolution, as I'm sure you know, where there's now pushback from suppliers is like, we're not sure we're going to retool for your, hope for numbers. And that's an interesting development in the industry because there wasn't that pushback by the suppliers before. They tended to be sort of docile.
Yeah, I mean, what we saw is that information darkness rolls downhill, right? So the tier ones have good intel because they work direct with the OEMs, but then they have to insulate themselves when they go to the tier twos and say, look, we need 400,000 when they really know it's 375,000. And there's no sinister activity there, but they have to be prepared for this cycle. And so we see as we work with the supply chains that, the tier ones might have a good thing, but you're talking about 150 major tier ones, maybe less than that globally. The tier twos and tier threes are in the dark. They get an RFQ that says vehicle X ship at the plant Y. They go, what's this? And we have to help them disseminate. Well, it's this vehicle. But then to pull that thread more, but by the way, that vehicle is on a platform that's 10 times bigger than the volume you're getting. Why don't you go back to the tier one or the OEM and say, give me all the business. I'll give you a 7% long-term agreement instead of a 5% long-term agreement, and we can maximize all the savings. So it's changing, but there's still that close to the vest conversations of, I don't want to show all my cards here because I got to keep squeezing price down the chain.
But to that point, with the consolidation and commoditization of everything in the auto industry, OEM and for the tier ones, are the tier one suppliers now going to start dictating prices to the OEMs where before the OEMs were like, no, knock 3% off of that? That the tier ones, because like, well, what other choice do you have but to come to us? And it's like, this is what you're going to pay.
Yeah, we see the tier ones is managing all the content right now, right? Well, there's this evolution of this automotive space, and the tier ones are bringing the top end game to the OEMs to differentiate themselves. Everyone's got crossovers in multiple colors and sizes and shapes. So how do you differentiate those vehicles? Well, it's not going to be GM and Ford redesigning. It's going to be saying, suppliers, you're the experts in this field. So you're going to see the Magnas of the world getting more involved, and then the Continentals, all these mega suppliers. I think it was 0.5 we called them in the past, not even tier one. They're 0.5. They're even higher than that. And they're going to be forced to say, now it's your job to get us to the price points we need. And they're going to be taking that mantle and running with it and then pressing on the lower suppliers to do that. So we're seeing a shift of power coming down that pike. But we're still needing the fact that cost is constantly trying to get squeezed out of this market somehow.
Well, how about the suppliers' input on the volume? How strong is that?
We are seeing some pushback. We see pushback on OEMs that have traditionally have said one thing and it's always been the other, right? You sort of have to be okay. Now the boy cried wolf at that point. So it's the fifth time you've come back to me and changed it by 12% on me. Now we're going to need you to prepay. We're going to need some more upfront investment before we make our own investment. So we are seeing some of that pushback, but unfortunately the tier ones can sort of absorb it. I'm not saying they're cash flush, but they are sitting in a much better position than the hundreds and thousands of tier twos that are all fighting for a piece that some can't afford to say, I can't push back.
Yeah, well, I'm not suggesting the automakers are just, trying to make up some numbers.
Correct.
They honestly feel they're going to sell that many vehicles and need this many parts. But sometimes they become a little overambitious.
Well, I tell people, and this is not to pick on anyone, but no one's expecting the next Pontiac Aztek, right? No one's expecting, hey, we got this vehicle and put up money, and it becomes not the best, well-accepted vehicle in the market. So if we see the business plans once in a while, right? It's our job. We've been doing this for 30 years. So when we put all the business plans together, we'll have a 19 million market in North America. It's really 17. Because no one's going to build a loser. Everyone's going to maximize capacity. There's going to be no downturn, but they have to make sure their suppliers are always ready for that. And that's the most precarious portion for the suppliers.
Hey, speaking of that volume, we're bumping around 17 million units a year in the U.S. market right now, new vehicle sales. Merrill Lynch Bank of America says it's going to drop to 13 or 14 million in 2022. You know, that's right around the corner. That's a pretty big drop. Well, what is your forecast?
We're not calling for a drop that big. So you know our industry, right? There's going to be a drop. And it just says, and we're in on this massive cycle where as we go further and further, you know, it's like craps. Further and more you roll, the better chance that next one's going to be a 7 every single time. And you get people that roll for 45 minutes, you get people who roll for 3 seconds. So we're at a point right this second where we are calling for a softening. We're not calling for a cliff.
But are you calling for a softening just because it seems like it ought to happen, but it's been long enough? Or do you see something out there that goes, whoa, it's coming?
Was there a second part of that?
Sorry, to build off of that, do you see it as because of economic issues or because the pricing of new cars has become so expensive that no one's really buying, they're all leasing, but even then, it's still leasing prices are getting out of hand too?
I think it's more of the second one, the price of the vehicles going in. When you see new vehicles and we get to test drive and we tested it, drove new Blazer, it's fantastic, and then we look at the price tag at $47,000 and we're questioning where's this buyer.
$60,000 Gladiators, $92,000 X5s.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we argue
I
the
think
fact
we're still living off the tail of the pent-up demand, you know, that was out there after the market just dropped to, 10 million units a year. So, but there is a natural, you know, give or take a million or two level that the U.S. market is at. I mean, you know, you're just not going to suddenly go to 22 million or you know, some astronomical figure like that. So you can kind of get a sense of the cycle, if not always hit it to the month or even the year. But you know it's going to, once the demand has been abated, then the sales are going to drop.
Yeah,
and then it's going to repeat itself as the consumer needs to replace an aging vehicle.
That's correct. We're calling for a bottom in 2020, but our bottom is high 16 still. Right, still in line.
So next year, you see it dropping a little bit more?
A little bit more, and a softening and slowly going back. I think it's going to be a sort of a correction. I don't think, you know, economy is strong. There's a lot of positives going forward. I don't think people are going to say, okay, all of a sudden my wallet's away. People, you know how we work, right? We get amnesia sometimes when the 2009 happens, praying it never happens again, and people want the latest and greatest thing. And they're going to want to continue to invest in new product. And we are, every month we see this is going to be the month, and all of a sudden it goes, nope, still plugging along.
Strong,
yeah.
Are you seeing any issues with, not only here, but globally, people talking more about tariffs and protectionism affecting sales numbers?
We hear it, but I think we hear it from people that aren't necessarily in the industry.
Sure.
We were both at APMA this week, and there's a great presentation from one of the main CEOs in Canada, and she really hit the nail on the head. She goes, look, we're just going to have to adapt. We got to be flexible. Yes, there's pain points, but if we want to survive, we've done it before. We've lived through the crises. We don't see a crisis. This is not a 2009 crisis, and we're going to find a way. And we come up with a theory that there's got to be more cooperation in the industry, right? We have to get rid of biases, and we're going to have more Chryslers and you know, FCAs and Renault Nissans getting together going, look, for the greater good, we've already squeezed all the price out. Let's get more commonization. Let's standardize. You know, let's have the same plug-in charging globally. Let's have the same emission standards. Let's have the same safety standards, so we're not constantly forced to be silos. And I think we're going to have, you know, we might be 10 years away or 20 years away from 10 major manufacturers in the world, and that's it, where they've all decided to get together for the greater good. A lot easier said than done. But I think the tariff issues, we are seeing some acute pain, but I think they're going to find out, the ones that want to compete are going to find a way to adjust their market strategy so they will at least weather the storm.
Well, the 2009 crisis was the auto industry happened to be standing next to a hand grenade that went off with the, you know, the banking, credit and banking meltdown. They're selling a product that is basically bought on credit, right? I mean, nobody goes into an auto dealership and starts counting out cash, or not very many people anyway. And if they do, they're suspected of money laundering. So you have to almost figure in imponderables as to, you're not just looking at the behavior of the auto industry or the suppliers, or even the want of product alone, right? In terms of making predictions. You have to look outside the industry.
Oh, we look
And
at...
that's to your tariff question and some other issues as well.
Yeah, we just don't, we're not hearing consumers are backing out because of tariff issues. We all hear the ball rolling issue, right? Well, tariffs are tax our own consumers, and we're going to pass that cost on. Well, the OEMs aren't going to pass the cost on, or they're going to spread it out somehow.
They're going to eat some of it.
They're going to eat some of it. And right now, maybe they changed their pricing model. You know, I can own a $1,000 iPhone because I spread it over 30 payments, and what's $30 a month? But it's still a $1,000 phone if you look at it from that perspective. So is there going to be having an adjustment to convince the consumer to sort of get away from that, or how they impact the tariff is? It's going to be. No one's going to say, sure, I'll take the pain with you. They're going to say, I'm not going to buy it. And the OEMs are not going to say, we're going to walk away from the business.
You know, I want to go back to your thoughts on consolidation in the industry, because I've been hearing this my entire career. I remember the experts in the industry in 1980 saying, by the year 2000, there will only be 5 car companies in the world. And, you know, look at it now. You know, we got a gazillion Chinese companies coming into it. If you just look in this country, there's Tesla, there's Rivian, there's SF, there's NIO, there's Bollinger, there's Borgeron. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. I don't see the consolidation happening at all.
Well, so I see it on 2 levels. I see it on legacy players and new players, right? So in terms of, it's called China a new player. What we see in China is this. There's 400 players all producing 10,000 units a year. And the Chinese government's got to say, we have to be an export producer. We can't just always build. So what do we have to do? We need better safety, we need better quality, we need better, higher standard vehicles, so there is a North American and European consumer of our products.
But will North America and Europe let a flood of Chinese cars?
No. But so based on that thing, I'm going to take those 400 players, building 10,000. I'm going to subsidize 200, doing 20,000. And I'm going to subsidize 100, doing 40,000. So you're going to see this consolidation attrition, but the volume's still going to be there. Because China's going to want to say, the only way we're going to be a global power is we have to have global volume, that we can go out and we get buying power. We can have OEMs that are all doing 1 million units a year. So we're not going to subsidize the little guys anymore. And I think that's what we're going to see. We're going to see that flushed out. Now, look, we always say, you know, we always said, hey, you know, the Japanese products, or even a Beetle, right? The Beetle was the antithesis of the land yachts that we had. No way it's going to make it. And here we are today with Volkswagen. The Koreans, there's no way we're going to let Koreans in. How about a low price and high warranty model? Okay, now I'm looking. We're seeing this brand erosion. Loyalty of brands is eroding, right? You don't see a lot of people that are, I'm Chevy, I'm Ford lifers. You say, what's that thing
Unless
over
it's
there?
pickups.
Yeah, that's right, unless it's pickups. Or we have a Gladiator, or we have this thing called a Rivian that comes out. We have these new things going. People are actually turning their heads and going, what if? And once people start saying the what if, all of a sudden the whole landscape changes in terms of who the players are. So I think the OEMs are really saying, we're going to let these disruptors come up.
John mentioned, you know, hearing for years about the consolidations that never occurred. We've heard for years about the Chinese coming into the U.S. market. When is that going to occur? Have you given up on predicting that, or?
Well, it's outside of our window, number one. And our window goes through 2026 right this second. You know, our theory is you need to have a sales organization here. You have to have 50,000 units a year even to justify a Chinese vehicle here, to put manufacturing. So you say Zodiac, you see BAIC, you see GAC, you see Chery, all keeping looks. BYD with the Warren Buffett investment could be a good play. I think, Joe, the China way in is going to be similar to what Geely did with Volvo. Try to find some brand that has some equity in people's mind. It's not going to have some unknown or you couldn't spell it name. It's going to have something. So what happens? Well, Lincoln Co. is going to come in. Okay, well, Lincoln Co. Sell Lincoln? Maybe. But, you know, maybe it's something that we can convince the North American consumer to take a peek at, because it might be pretty. It might have some cool features. So it's going to be glacial to get here, but to say they're never going to be here would be, I mean, I think a miss.
Yeah. Let's talk about China specifically. Last month, I was stunned to see this. China only sold 10,000 more new cars than the U.S. Wow. I mean, that's how much and how fast that market has shrunk. What do you think's going on?
So they take all the subsidization off, right? They were subsidizing their consumers, and we would have 10%, 12% growth every single year going, this is unsustainable growth. And they ripped all that incentives out of China for their local consumers, because they were offering the, you know, if you buy before the end of December, you'll get half of your purchase tax back. And when you rip that incentive out, I think what's happening is that the consumer's going, I don't need a car right this second. You know, there's a people, the logic in China is electric vehicles are there because you get the free license plate because it's green. Okay, well, I'll eventually need that, and I get a free license plate, I don't have to go to auction? Okay, I'll buy into this new energy vehicle concept. So I think that's where China is, but I don't think China's bottom's going to fall out. I think that's where they're going to reconfigure and say, we can't risk too many downturns, because people are going to say, yeah, this is a flash in the pan. We're going to reconfigure how we're going to go to market.
How much of it is going to other markets if your own market is that shaky?
They have to go to other markets, that's the thing. They have to start saying, well, maybe we'll start looking at Middle East, Africa. Maybe we'll start now penetrate more of Europe. We'll eventually keep on moving over to North America, but they have to react now to make an export consumed vehicle, or they're going to die on the vine. I don't see the Chinese government allowing that to happen. They're dying.
How better positioned are the Chinese manufacturers right now to go mass production into electric than, say, we are in North America?
I think that's a good question about the electrification.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, I'm going to tell you why I say it, because we just came out with an 850-page study of all the images and specs of every electrified vehicle in the world. And when we do a forecast, we have to go say, hey, here's a brand new manufacturer. So we go to Google Maps and we say, that's a dirt pile, and they're going to build in 6 months. They can't build it. No, we're supplier X, and they're telling us to build parts. Okay, we'll make up a car. We'll give it 3 units, just so you have it. But there's a dirt pile. There's not even a facility there where they're going to build. So in terms of EVs, I just, you know, the Chinese, my perspective of Chinese manufacturers are a lot of it are low speed, a lot of it are low range. You got to move the needle up, and the only way they're going to move that needle up, and they've done this recently, is say, we're not going to subsidize the 90-kilometer ones, we're going to subsidize the 250 range ones. Yeah. And now all of a sudden these guys die on the vine, and now the investment's here. But the only way they're going to own that industry is they're going to have the government constantly incentivizing it.
And I'm just wondering if that's their path into the U.S. is to have a reasonably well-developed EV vehicle that can be marketed here.
Yeah, so our take on electrification is think about the low barrier of entry. No powertrain, no need to get your engine certified, less fluids, if any fluids. You can 3D print one probably for today, jam some powertrain in there. If it's pretty enough, that's going to be their entry point, because it could be a low-cost way of getting in. Let's go test the market with these EVs. We see California, obviously normal test bed, but we see Ontario. We've always pushed on Canada. Canada can be nimble. Canada doesn't have their own brand. They're victim to whatever decisions we make as the big U.S. companies, the big German or Asian companies. And they need their own footprint, and one of those footprints could be, look, come on over. Let us introduce this Chinese-made vehicle. Maybe we start with fleet and the government. Maybe we do something, but they can be nimble with the way they approach the market.
What is the Chinese expertise of electric vehicles? Are they that good at it that they could hit some of those numbers you're talking about? Or are we talking about them taking other people's technology in some form or another?
Look, it's no secret.
The mode of operation heretofore.
That's correct. There's no secret that the IP drain in China is there, and I don't think they make a better electric vehicle. But electric vehicles, to me, sometimes can be like soapboxes. We're all in a soapbox derby. They're all made of cardboard. Mine got a little faster. Why? I figured out the aerodynamics a little better. Okay, great. But it's the same 7 parts. Mm-hmm. And I'm not trying to oversimplify electrification, but it gets them to that market faster. And if they decide we're going to get it into IC engine vehicles, they're not going to. The only way to get there is through partnerships. By opening their doors to Tesla and saying, "Come on in," they're just. I think that they're going to say, well, we're just going to steal it right from you looking at you. We don't have to join a joint venture anymore. We're going to permanently borrow it, let's say. I don't want to,
don't need lawyers to come
back. So I don't think they're that much better. I just think there's such a volume there that if you pick 20 manufacturers and each has some little nugget of value, then maybe those 20 get together and say, okay, this vehicle now has 20 pieces of value. I don't think any one of them can stand on their own right this second on a global space.
Yeah, and going back to China sales, also sales of new energy vehicles, which is essentially battery electrics and plug-ins, slowed down dramatically. They grew 2% last month. And as you know, automakers have to meet 10% market share in China with those kinds of vehicles this year.
Right.
And last month, total market, it was only 6.5%. So if this continues for the rest of the year, there's going to be whopping big fines on these car companies.
Or China's going to say, maybe we'll move the needle. I'd be shocked if they don't move the needle to say, we don't want to de-incentivize you to be here. We need you here. So you know what? We'll extend that. Give me something else over here. Or maybe we'll expand the hybrids this time. Maybe we'll not just put in plug-ins are better, because hybrids are just plummet, because that doesn't count into the NEV calculation.
That's been Toyota's argument to China all along, because they're so good at
We
hybrids.
mastered this. Let us have it.
Yeah.
Well, you know, John had mentioned earlier about the consolidations that never happened. Do you see them happening at some point, that trend being reversed, where companies like FCA and Renault actually do get together without
I see it from a
something
different
blowing
reason
it
in
up?
the past. You know, it was the merger of equals with Daimler and Chrysler, which obviously we all knew it wasn't, right? A lot of the consolidations of the past were, how do we take 20 vehicles and get 10 out of the deal? The reason I like the Chrysler-Renault deal is they're not looking for killing vehicles. There's still an overlap, but they're saying, well, why don't we leverage our overlap? We have dedicated consumers. Why don't we continue to optimize our global platforms and make more and more on the same underpinnings? One example is, you know, Chrysler and Nissan have an aging V6, the Pentastar and the VQ, right? Get rid of both of them, make a new one with direct injection and turbocharging. So now you take 2 and 1, but don't eliminate. Because the biggest fear I see is when you try to do this consolidation, you're saying we're going to cut costs because we're taking 5 vehicles down to 2. And then all of a sudden people go, well, I wanted that vehicle over there. Continue down the same brands, but find a way to cooperate so that you can maximize your supply base, you can give more volume, you can standardize better, and you can have the underpinnings, which no one really sees the underpinnings. All the hi-hat comes on and it looks like a different vehicle. But every one of them, Chrysler, Renault, Nissan, have 15 different crossovers. I'm not saying get rid of any. So we did a little map and said, yeah, there's a lot of issues here. Chrysler would get electrification, right, which they're not in. Sergio was completely against it. He was losing money on every vehicle. Said, don't.
So is everybody else, by the way.
Right. So at least they have,
Just
right,
talked about it more.
they'll get China influence. There's a lot of little benefits when we looked at it, as long as they don't get us hubris where one, you know, silo of the world, whether it's Germany or France or Japan, wants to take over. That's when everything falls apart, I think.
Which is what we saw.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, to me, the whole Renault FCA thing is a Europe play. You're right. V6 engines they could collaborate on, 4-cylinder engines,
Right.
transmissions. Pretty much ends there as far as FCA's North American product
That's
goes.
right.
There's nothing else that
Nothing
Renault
else.
can help them with. I'm not even convinced
one
their
thing.
electrification is any better than any supplier could give Chrysler.
I agree with that. It just gives them, it's already a foundation. They don't have to make an additional investment in it. Is it better? No. It's not any worse, but then they don't have to then make an additional investment in it. They can let that side basically say, all right, you guys take the electrification. Nissan, Renault, you take the electrification space, and when we need to leverage it, we'll leverage it.
Joe, tell me this, though. Everybody says, oh, FCA, they got to have a partner. There's no way that they can survive long term. And I look at FCA's revenue, EBIT, production. It's not that different from Honda. And I don't hear anybody saying, oh, boy, Honda needs a partner.
Oh, I got 2 words for you, Jeep and Ram.
Yeah.
I mean that's right there.
But as long as gas is cheap, though, right? As soon as we go back to $5 a gallon.
We're not going to $5. I mean, look.
If we were
yes,
to.
and we always play that card. If
Right.
we're going, right? I think OPEC's not going to take a chance and say, fine, all of a sudden the barrel goes up, and we're going to let this EV, this thing come in. And it's got to be acute. It's got to be tomorrow.
Right.
If it's 18 months from now, we're all going to say, gas is only $5, right? So, you know,
Little boiling frog, yeah.
Right. We always do that whole idea, right? The boiling frog. So, I think the gas price issue is going to be sustained, and you hit nail on the head. $48,000 Jeeps, and see people are still buying them left and right because people want that uniqueness, and that's. I'm waiting for the Ford Bronco, see how that comes in.
That could
Right?
be a smash hit for them.
Could be, yeah. Could be a really good, but
And finally gives them a competitor against Wrangler.
That's right. Yeah.
If it's Wrangler-like. We haven't driven it yet.
Right.
So.
But then we see Volkswagen come out the Atlas, right? And we see that taking on Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer. Like we see these other players going, hey, we got to be in this 3-row space. Finally, Telluride, great vehicle.
You know, the amazing thing is that the whole industry let Jeep get away with this for so long.
Right.
That's
Well,
stunning.
Hummer was about the closest thing, right? And then that got killed. And what was planned for Hummer was actually pretty good.
If Hummer were still alive today, it would be one rocking brand for General Motors.
Right.
That's where perception becomes reality, right? I mean, Hummer became the poster child for, unfriendly environmental vehicles. And it was getting better gas mileage than some other vehicles in its segment.
Hummer's only mistake is they missed the fracking boom. If they hadn't missed that, they'd be easy peasy selling like crazy.
The government saying, hey, you want that larger vehicle as a write-off for your company?
Yeah.
Get that right back on there. That'll sell to the roof.
But how do you talk about the Jeep having competitors, and they do, but Jeep also has that culture. I mean, Jeep owners really are loyal, and there's that whole Jeep thing that they talk about. That's hard to replicate. You can replicate a product that is similar to a Jeep, but to come up with that whole mass loyalty that they have is hard.
It's the rare thing where like brand loyalty actually is a thing, and they've cultivated that well over the last 20 to 25 years.
But that was cultivated in North America, right? Before the Renegade, right?
But even in Europe, though, wasn't a Jeep kind of a like, I'm not saying a thing, but like if you had a Jeep in Europe, that was like, wow, that's...
It was more of a status. You're one of the rare, they weren't every third vehicle.
Right.
So once the Renegade comes out, then all of a sudden now they're a global player, and they have to build a different looking vehicle for a mass consumer. And luckily they leveraged that. But you're right, that's one where the loyalty still, I mean, I have a 1980 Jeep myself. I love Jeeps.
I remember talking a few years ago to a Jeep marketing guy, and he said, my marching orders were, don't screw this up.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Well, remember when they went to square headlights, and you would have thought the world came to an end.
I have a CJ7, it's round, and you don't even wave to the square headlights guy on the road anymore.
They learned their lesson. They're never going to make that mistake again. Hey, look, we've run out of time here.
Okay.
Joe, thanks so much for
my pleasure.
for coming in. We're going to have you back. This was a great conversation. Really good.
All right.
Steve Finlay, great having you. Eric Trytko, great having you.
Great,
Thank you.
Good show here. And of course, as always, want to thank all of you for having tuned in.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, your journey, our passion. Lear, a global leader in automotive seating and electrical systems. And by Borg Warner, propulsion solutions that support a clean, energy-efficient world.
Visit our website, Autoline.tv, where you can watch us live Thursday afternoons. Get your daily fix with Autoline Daily and in-depth analysis and interviews with Autoline This Week. There's all that and much more at Autoline.tv. Anyway, he did this crazy. He'd always do stupid, crazy stuff. But one of the things he did, this is back in the days when there's still payphones.
Yeah.
And he said he had an ache on his back. So he taped his cell phone to his back, put it in vibration mode first. Then he'd go and put a quarter in the payphone and call himself. And he'd go, oh, God, does that feel good? And he says, and the best part about it is once I feel healed, I hang it up, I get my quarter back. I never answer the phone.
Never answers.
So what do we not get into? I mean, you gave your whole big presentation. We covered you with all kinds of questions. What did we miss in the recorded part of the show?
I mean, I'm trying to think of what else we didn't touch. This normal story: passenger cars down, crossovers up. That's global in nature. So
Still more station wagons sold than EVs in the U.S.
I
think that's an actual number I saw. There were actually more station
That
wagons
can't
sold.
be right. Not with Tesla's numbers. Not anymore.
Look, we never have.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm
500.
sorry. It was outside. If you took Tesla out of it, it was, that's what it was.
Do you guys track their sales? Can you even get numbers?
They do them quarterly, right? So if you actually go to Tesla's website every quarter, they'll
But that's their
send them out.
global sales.
No. Yeah, but they'll break it out by what they produce, what they sold. Yes, in terms of where the
It's
sales
really hard
are.
to figure out what they're selling in the U.S.
Well, the production side's easy because it's one spot, but the sales side's a little difficult.
And I've heard from, I think it was Stephanie Brindley who said that the way they tracked it differently is there's what Tesla sells, and then there's they went like state by state registration to see what's actually really sold.
Right.
So there's the Tesla, what they say, and versus what actually is the number.
But I look at all different numbers, including Ward's numbers, and they're all over the map.
I know.
And I mean, by big delta differences.
Yeah.
So I don't know where they're really at.
Yeah, my last point I was going to make on electrification is, I don't know if it pisses people off or not, but I always say, if there wasn't two things that happened in this industry, we wouldn't be talking electrification. If Tesla didn't have acute success, but their definition of success right now has nothing to do with profitability. It has to do with what they could be, right? And poor GM and Ford, it's all about profitability. So they've changed the model of, well, we're going to invest on what you can be. Don't worry about that stinky thing called profitability. And by the way, it took us 9 years to build what F-Series does in 1 quarter, right? So you put all this thing. And if Volkswagen never got caught, we'd be talking lightweighting, right?
Yeah.
We'd be talking, hey, how much carbon fiber could you get in this car?
Yeah.
Right? Because we'd be saying electrification.
And look at all those diesels.
Look at those diesels. They're beautiful, right? I mean, and I look at those 2 events. I'm going, 2 major events in this world have shifted the whole needle to, now let's go save the world, 1 EV at a time. Doesn't matter if it's only tailpipe emissions, because the whole chain is dirty, but, you know, there's an optics on there. And so I think we're in a space where we're going to have ebbs and flows, but I don't think it's going to be this hockey stick.
Do you see an influence at all on sales by mobility as a service?
Mobility as a service, the logic here is that, I think we've all heard this, is that if you have 6 people sharing the same car, then instead of me going to work and parking for 8 hours, maybe going to lunch, and that's it, someone else is taking it from me. So that life cycle of that vehicle is going to be 18 months, not 4 years. And all of a sudden now your production numbers go up because you've exhausted the life cycle.
I'll give you a different take on that. My take on it is that this is going to be run by fleets. And the fleets are going to say, excuse me, Mr. OEM, I don't want a car that's been designed for 150,000 miles life. I want a 1,000,000-mile life.
Right.
And yeah, it's going to cost a little bit more, but it's not that much more. It really isn't. You know, Class 8 semi-tractors are designed to last 1,000,000 miles. You can get a full Class 8 tractor for about $140,000. You know, compare that to higher-end Porsches or the like, and to me, it's a screaming deal.
Right.
What do you do to them, John, to make them go 1,000,000 miles?
Well, you know, number one, you got to change your test cycle and your duty cycle. Right now, all light vehicles are designed to last 150,000 miles. You know, if you drive 15,000 miles a year, which people increasingly do not do because they got multiple cars, they've got other forms of transportation. So it lasts 10 years. You know, and that's where we're at right now. The average car today is about 11 years old. But my example is the London cab. It's purpose-built for mobility services.
Right.
It can turn on a dime. It can fit 5 people, no problem. And I was able to dig this up online. 40% of London cabs are 10 to 20 years old.
Wow.
So they've designed these things so that quick turnaround in terms of service. And, you know, they don't have cloth seats. You know, they have very thick vinyl and stuff like that. So I believe that for when it comes to AMOD, autonomous mobility on demand especially, these fleets are going to say, I want 1,000,000-mile durability. I want the interior, you know, all put together with Velcro so I can rip out the carpets and the covers on the seats and put new ones in no time whatsoever.
Sounds like building airplanes.
Well,
And that model where it's like, let's turn these things in 30 minutes and stuff as many people in as we can.
Well, you know, look at the B-52s that this country is still using.
Right.
The pilots and the crew are far, far younger than the planes themselves. When was the last one built? 1962, I think it was. So it's crazy, but we update them with new avionics, new engines, and boom, they're they're good to go.
But the point you made about having the interior customized, because people want the latest, greatest, right? People don't buy a car saying, oh, I hope I can last this, I can keep this thing for 12 years.
Right.
Right? They
But
want to
that's
say,
personal
keep
ownership.
this for 4 years.
Yeah. That's personal ownership. I'm saying when it comes to the fleets doing this mobility
That
stuff,
makes sense for fleets.
they're going to want cars that last.
Yeah.
And, you know, look, even in New York City, you know, you go look at their fastest, in fact, they're gone, you know, no, not the Checkers, the Crown Vics.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you could put 400,000 or 500,000 miles on those things.
problem.
No problem.
Right.
And we had a guy in here for the TV show, Test Loop, which does long-range ride sharing with only Teslas. He's got several of them that have got over 450,000 miles, and all they've changed is the tires and the windshield wipers.
And all you have to convince is the UAW to say, no problem, we'll build a car that lasts 15 years. You might have a little bit of pushback on the labor side.
Well, you know, they don't have a say in this discussion.
Yeah.
They don't. And not in terms of how do you design vehicles for longevity.
Right.
They should go to the mat on wages and benefits,
Okay.
but they should not be dictating how you design cars.
Right.
Okay, I'll get off my soapbox.
No, okay. That's good.
Do you feel that way? You were mentioning that you're from a family of UAW members.
It's funny because I'm the outcast because I'm the college-educated kind of libertarian of the family. So, but it's one of those things of when in the 30s and 40s and up until the 60s, yes, I can see the reason for unions. But now, with as commoditized as everything is, with the availability and ease of mobility of jobs and locations, stuff like this, it's good for, and I hate, this is a horrible term to use, but it's great for the lowest common denominator, right? Mm-hmm. But if you have any level of skill and intelligence, to me, it's more of a hindrance than hurting you. It's more of a hindrance than a help. But, if the people, if they want that, okay. But I personally, no. But
I do see a time where they're going to change the workforce model. It's going to be a flexible workforce model that's going to be, you're going to move them around. They're going to say, you want a job? Fine. Then we're going to move you around in this quadrant.
Like if you're in the service or something?
That's right. I mean,
Wow.
we're actually starting to hear a little bit about some.
I've heard of Army brats. I've never heard
but
of
I mean,
UAW brats go around the country with their
local
family.
unions for like electricians and plumbers and stuff. It's like, yeah, you live in this area, but you may be working on this job for a month, but then you're going to be working on this job at a different, across town. But that's your local union telling you where you're going.
Yeah,
So you're not talking about moving them around the country or something?
No, but we're hearing some rumblings about OEMs trying to think about how there's more flexible workforces, whether it's not really shifts, but it's more you get paid X and you can work here when we need you here when you're on call, sort of a thing. But they're trying to change the model of the workforce so they don't have to constantly be hiring, laying off. There's some stability in terms of, okay, we'll have a flat line here. Yes, we know we do 27% overtime in any given year. Let's flatline this thing, and your group you're sort of on call. Maybe you're at this plant, maybe you're at this plant in a reasonable range, but you're not always just right here all the time.
Boy, that's interesting. Do you guys think, on the topic of the UAW, that they'll ever break into those southern plants?
Never, in my opinion.
No, it's a totally different culture.
But I also think that the UAW has gone about it in the wrong way. They've gone after these workers and said, in terms of social injustice, especially the run that they made at the Nissan plant in Canton, Mississippi, it was all racial. It's like they're discriminating against Black Americans. And it's always been this social. I would go to them and go, God damn, you see that $10,000 profit check that I got at General Motors? Don't you guys want that?
Right.
That's how you go and get those guys to say, sign me up.
Right.
Don't let these companies rip you off. We got all these profits out of them. That's how you get them to sign up.
And to the point, too, especially the Japanese manufacturers and even the European manufacturers who went down south, they did the math and said, okay, what do we have to pay these people where, yes, they would be more with unions, but by the time the union takes all the union vig out of their checks, it's within a couple points and they don't have to deal with it, So they pay well enough where the people working on the line are like, hey, it's a good job. They offer me this and the benefits and things like that. Why do I need you?
Well, they're making another run at the VW.
Yeah,
right.
Chattanooga, yeah.
Well, it's a big argument because the union did get enough of the skilled trades to sign a card to say we want to be organized. And now the argument is
It has to be the whole plant, right?
that's what Volkswagen. You got to be real careful as a car company. You got to be very careful or you'll have the law coming down on you. So it's business groups and the state of Tennessee that is saying, no. It has to be all the workers in the plant or none of them. You can't just, organize the skilled trades, but we'll see where it goes. Right now we've got a Republican administration. We've got, I think, a one-person majority on the board of the NLRB. It's going to be very tough for the union to get anywhere with that kind of a setup. But to me, the big thing is I believe we're going into a world where we're not going to need as many cars. It's going to be long-term. I don't see it being a light switch and all of a sudden volume collapses. So who's going to survive? It's going to be the most efficient plants. There are UAW plants that are just as competitive from a productivity standpoint as non-union plants. But a union plant is more expensive. You've got shop committee men, you've got shop stewards. They're on the company payroll. The union doesn't pay that. The company pays that. As an automaker, now you've got to have this whole labor relations staff that every 4 years has got to negotiate a contract, and in the interim years has got to put out all these fires at every individual plant. Non-union plants don't have that cost.
Well, an example of that are the Oshawa plants. You know, they would win awards on productivity. The Harbor Report always rated them very highly.
Right.
And you would think, boy, they're doing everything right, and suddenly they become decimated.
Yeah, but we learned this at the APMA conference yesterday.
Yeah.
The issue isn't wages. It's not currency. It's three other things. Cost of energy in Canada, well, the U.S. has probably the lowest energy cost in the world of any major industrialized country. It's taxes.
That's the bigger
and it's logistics. You know, you are farther north. You are a little bit more out of the way of things. So it's not wages. It's not, you know, health care. It's not all the other things. It's the three things that I just mentioned.
The cost of energy thing is interesting, but just because of how much of Canada, and especially Ontario and then Quebec as well, but really Ontario is run off of hydro.
Right. Yes.
I mean, that's relatively inexpensive.
But they don't. Yeah, it's
What
very
do they charge?
expensive.
I can ask my friends. I was just up there last week.
Yeah, hydropower should be great, right? But what do they charge?
Yeah, it's very expensive.
Yeah.
I know there's some concessions going on where they're actually going to run a few things. It's not going to be completely shut down in Oshawa. They're going to be doing some work out of there, but it's only going to be like 300 to 500 people.
Yeah,
in
there's
there,
spare
something like
parts
that.
and things like
Yeah.
that.
Right.
And I still think, you know, GM saw the writing on the wall, and they said, let's just make sure we keep products in here that aren't going to sell, so we can say it's product mix, portfolio mix, right?
Right.
We're not going to blame the Canadian government. We're going to blame the fact that, well, no one's buying these cars anymore. Okay. Well, no one's buying the cars. Then there's capacity's not needed anymore. We'll shut it down.
Okay, so GM's closing 3 assembly plants and 2 powertrain plants, right?
Correct. I thought.
Is that going to take care of their overcapacity problem?
No, we still have, I think, Fairfax. We have 4 plants that are underutilized right this second.
Wow. How underutilized?
Enough where
under 80%?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Enough where it is concern level. So we came with the white paper and say, wait a second, this is not end phase 1. This may be phase 2 coming. I was talking to Toyota the other day, and they say, you know, we don't have any plans to do 3 shifts because we don't want to fear that we'll just do overtime because we don't want to be the guys that turns and says, sorry, we have to let you go.
Yeah.
So they're very consistent about where they put their products, stuff like that. But you know, GMO's always had that problem, constant. And so we think there's about 3 or 4 plants right this second that should have concern about being a little underutilized. I don't have the list right in front of me. I'm trying to think of which one it was.
So FCA looks real good, though, right?
Yes, well, they're better utilized in their facilities, right?
Yeah.
They're just backfilling
'cause I
ramps
get
and Jeeps and what they can.
your weekly update of everything, and as I scroll through it, you know, you've got all the plants there, and it seems like every FCA plant says overtime.
Yeah, right.
And Ford's pretty much in good shape.
Yeah, they're
too,
cranking
right?
out too. But you know, they've offshored most of their cars, and they're finally, you know, everyone's getting smaller and smaller to be more efficient. That's where the squeeze comes. But they're getting, we don't see any more real major investment coming in. We do like Rivian though.
Yeah, how can you not?
I like Rivian for the simple reason that we've seen their plan. It's a rational plan.
Well, someone asked me about that, and I said they're sort of the anti-Tesla. They didn't come in as arrogant. They didn't come say, "Oh, we're going to revolutionize the world. We're different." They're like,
just give them a chance. They'll get there.
Right. They've been relatively low key, and they haven't overpromised and underdelivered yet.
Right.
We'll see in 12 to 14 months when this is supposed to be rolling out.
Yeah.
Look, they picked 2 vehicles no one has in that space.
Yeah. And the packaging on that truck is just amazing.
Yeah, it's got cool design. They're doing it right, and their plans they're shooting for 25,000 units a year of each. We still think it's high, but they're not coming out with that 500,000 Tesla rocket ship, no pun intended. And
what do you think Ford's going to do with them?
The Rivian really, the pickup truck really should be the E150, except you can't call it E because
That's right.
it's the old van.
Yes,
but that really should be the E150.
Yeah, we think that's a
You're
perfect.
the only one who remembers the what?
The Autoline van.
So what do you think Ford's going to do with Rivian?
Yeah, we think they're going to look down that small size pickup truck, the RT1 or RS1, I forget which one. I guess RT1 is the truck, right? I think they'll leverage that platform. And at a minimum, their electrification platform, the underpinnings in their F-Series. That's sort of our logic is going to go on this one. I also think when Sam put together the analysis, and if you've seen it or not, the shadow area of the their platform is the same as the Edge. Like there's one vehicle, or the Explorer, it's almost to a millimeter.
Wow.
And he's going, that might be the next, it might be the Explorer. And we're like, because he measured.
So it could go down the line in a Ford plant.
Correct. So they use the underpinnings, have them make the investment in electrification strategy, and then bolt it on top, bolt it underneath. So
Why do you think GM did not come to a deal with Rivian?
the rumor was they wanted full control over the whole situation. Rivian wants to be a contract manufacturer.
Oh, wow.
Right? They want to say, we'll build for anybody, which is brilliant.
That is
Well,
brilliant.
I was in Atlanta yesterday and I was having lunch with some people, and they were saying that the guy who founded Rivian, or
Yeah, R.J.
CEO,
Scaringe.
Yeah, he's from MIT, and they were
Yeah.
comparing him with Elon Musk, and they said the big difference is if Elon Musk was in this restaurant, you would know it because of the way he is.
Celebrity, yeah.
And if this guy were in the same restaurant, you wouldn't know it.
Yeah.
And that sort of, I don't know what that means exactly in terms of how much of personality can influence a company, but they were saying they thought Rivian was in better hands.
Look,
because of that.
you're gonna pick your Amazon Prime button, and the Rivian's gonna be at your doorstep, right? Because they're making a huge investment in their product.
So
Amazon
like $100
is.
million or something like that?
Yeah, and they're not gonna let that fail. They're gonna make that their drone delivery system. Right? Hey, by the way, we got these electric trucks. There's Amazon on the side. You don't have to worry about that white van who's throwing the package on your doorstep anymore. So I think there's a huge play on there, but the contract manufacturing play. It's huge.
I mean, along those lines, what do you think where this could all go, like what Magna's doing?
I knew those were the next word out of your mouth, right? I mean, that is, Don was completely, no, we're not going to do this. We have Steyr and all that. And when you have a mega supplier like Magna who can literally build their own vehicle and do every part.
Design and engineer the whole
Everything.
thing.
And it's tried, haven't they?
Yes. Soup to nuts, you name it.
They're doing it for VinFast, this Vietnamese company.
Right.
Now, VinFast is saying, it's the first Vietnamese vehicle ever. And I'm thinking, I think it
Yeah.
was done in Canada.
Yeah, the Canadian accent.
Aren't they doing the whole Jag I-Pace too?
They're doing the I-Pace out of Steyr, though.
Yeah. E-Pace and I-Pace down the same line.
Yep.
And they're also going to do this Waymo plant in Detroit to convert Pacificas and I-Paces into autonomous vehicles.
I just think it's brilliant. And if you work on a supplier, then they're they get everyone's business anyway. So they can basically control the IP and things like that and compartmentalize what needs to be done. But then they can sort of say, we've learned a baseline, productivity and manufacturing capability that we're going to spread to all these vehicles. So I think Magna's the next one that's going to change the direction of thinking of manufacturing.
Yeah. We had Don Walker in here a month or so ago or on the TV show, and it was interesting because I asked him, old code, new code. That's where all the suppliers are doing now. They're taking their old stuff and they're, leaving it behind and spinning off a new entity. And he's like, no, we're not going to do that. Yeah. We believe it's important to know how to stamp steel and mold plastic and weld and saw and,
And he's the right guy because he started in manufacturing. Like he started at the plant level, so he's seen it all.
Right.
He's not some CEO from a different industry who said, I'm going to come in and fix this thing. He's
but at the same time, they're at the bleeding edge of all this leading technology, autonomous, electric, all that stuff. So they've got the old stuff and the new stuff. I think it's a great combination.
Yeah, they're our poster child for the balance of core versus next generation stuff, that they found a way to balance those two things out.
Oh, Sam Fiorani says, tell Joe it's the Ford Expedition.
Thank you, Sam. Now get back to work, Sam.
That's right. We got some other things here. Okay, so Frank Catalina wants to know, why'd they close Lordstown?
Oh, cars, right? Crews.
Nobody's buying cars.
2 shift, 1 shift.
Yeah.
It was orphaned out where it was. It was an unfortunate, but that was a product portfolio mix, and they tried to stave it off by continually reducing the shift load, hoping that fuel prices go up, hoping there's a shift. You know, God forbid we get out of cars because that's part of our who we are at General Motors. And finally, Mary said, enough's enough.
Here's another rejoinder. I got to jump in on this and saying, remember, it was under the Obama administration that said, you idiots, and it wasn't just the Obama administration, it was everybody else
No
too.
one wants big
You
pickups and
idiots
cars.
in Detroit, you don't know what you're doing. If you built 40-mile-per-gallon cars in the United States, it would save your ass. And that's what the Cruise was an answer to.
Correct.
We're going to build a 40 MPG, you know, compact car in the United States with UAW labor, and then the market shifted.
Not only shifted, but the buyer shifted. You know, when we were all younger, the little Civic was our entry vehicle, and then we stayed in the Honda. We got bigger and bigger sedans, and our family grew. Now the entry's an Encore. It's a small CUV. So the new generation of buyer thinks, well, that's my entry. Why would I ever go to something that's lower to the ground? And you know, I get the same fuel economy, I get four-wheel drive, I get higher ride, I get safety. They're not. You have to convince them to jump the other direction. You know where they're going to jump the other direction and say, well, I want that luxury sedan. I'm not going to go from, you know, the Encore, which is entry level. I think it's tiny, but it sells like wildfire to a passenger car.
Well, Honda was
might-
saying, though, that, I'm sorry. go ahead.
I might argue with you that the crossovers and SUVs are same mileage and better handling and higher seat height is a better thing, but that's the enthusiast in me coming out saying.
Yeah, agree.
Because of like, sorry,
But I
I've
see
driven
what
so many crossovers and SUVs. in the
Today's
last-
station wagons,
Yeah.
mentioning station wagons. Honda was saying, though, the other week at the Automotive Press Association that young buyers, and this is driven mainly by price, are buying cars. Generation, they're you know, the hope of cars rests with Generation Z and Generation
Right.
Y.
And I just
Well, the Civic's a beautiful vehicle. They've styled it really nice, right? I look at, if you're going to buy a passenger car, you're going to look at the Asian manufacturers. If you're going to buy a luxury vehicle, you're going to look at the Europeans. And if you're going to buy anything bigger, crossover or better, especially pickup trucks, you're going to look at the Detroit 3. And that to me, that's the compartmentalizing.
Yeah, that's
Right? And then but
maybe
the
found
Detroit,
their niche
you know,
Spot on.
to excel in.
yeah, so that's why the Koreans are still going to invest in, and Honda and Toyota, they're still going to invest in cars. They're not going to walk away from that because that's, if you're even going to buy it, it's going to be theirs.
Okay, a couple of more questions, then we'll
Sure.
wrap it up. Levante A says, why can't Jaguar Land Rover merge with FCA? JLR needs a merger.
That's a good question.
Yeah, who was the rumor that JLR is going to merge?
It was going. The rumor was PSA is going.
Yeah,
to
that
buy
was
it.
the other one,
In fact,
PSA.
it was talked in the British media as if it was a done deal, and that was a month ago.
Was that when Ian retired? That
Ian just retired.
You know, but I'm saying, didn't that news come out at about the same time?
It came out
Or-
before it.
Okay.
Yeah. Ian Callum, the head of design at Jaguar, just retired.
Can a luxury automaker merge well with a non-luxury automaker? I mean, wasn't that the Daimler Chrysler problem?
Well, it was Ford too for how long, right?
Yeah, I don't get the necessity for. I don't know what Chrysler would need out of Jaguar Land Rover.
Yeah, right.
Right, because it's not going to. I don't think it's going to add enough to the bottom line on a global basis.
You know, when you look at the revenue that they get from Ram and Jeep,
Yeah.
those are luxury vehicles.
Right.
They're in that space.
Yes.
Right? So JLR is not going to help them in that regard.
Yeah.
PSA doesn't have a luxury
right.
brand.
Yeah.
Peugeot, you know, it makes sense, sort of. But, you know, Ford screwed up, I think, JLR and all the other brands it had because it just tried to manage it as another brand in the portfolio. No, they have to be a standalone company with their own design and engineering and their own it can't be just, oh, go find a parts bin and you build a Jaguar. You can't do it that way. The problem with Jaguar, though, Tata, I think, has been a very good owner.
Hands-off.
Very
Hands-off,
hands-off. Let
yeah.
them do their thing. The
Right.
problem for Jaguar is they just spent a ton of money developing this diesel engine. Well, write that investment off.
Right. Yeah.
That's
Great
gone.
planning.
It wasn't their fault. When they made the decisions, it was very logical. Go ahead and do this. The market shifted, as we've been talking about. Now they're screwed in terms of that. Now they got to invest a fortune in
Yes.
electrification. And their new I-Pace, the specs don't match up to what Tesla came out with 3 or 4 years ago
Yeah.
in terms of range and drivability and all that other stuff.
Yeah, I would just say Ford's legacy with Jaguar, Ford really did improve the quality of Jaguar. I mean, there were
They did some good things.
issues that, you know, a luxury automaker or a luxury vehicle that had reliability problems like Jaguar did,
Mm-hmm.
and Ford they didn't fix them all, but they fixed a lot of those problems.
Yeah, Ford fixed the things that it's really good at in terms of driving discipline in purchasing and, bill of materials and, build quality and build sequence and all that.
Branding.
But branding, they screwed up massively.
Yeah, and I think the whole Chrysler thing, I don't think Chrysler needs another niche player as a partner. They need a global player as a partner. And Jaguar is going to give them a niche player. So now you're going to, if the market shifts and that niche moves, now they're also in trouble at that point.
That's a good point. Who are your candidates?
Right.
Who are your candidates?
Well,
for
that's why we love Renault, because Renault found a way to work with Nissan and Mitsubishi, right? They found a way to have a healthy balance.
Or so we thought.
Well, yeah, right. One person,
Wheels
one bad apple.
Kinda, though.
But they found a way to really still keep their products in the mix and still work together from that perspective. So I like the fact that there wasn't any kind of real pushback that made it a struggling merger.
Well, if you have an auto company where a country has a stake in
Yeah.
it, doesn't that create some real problems?
We'll call Volkswagen.
BMW.
Right? BMW. I mean, they're going to, the only issue when they have a stake in it, then they can't afford it to fail. So you have a too big to fail mentality with some of these players where they're going, boy, we got to figure this thing out because it's going to be a black eye on us as a country. So they're going to find a way to, and that's one of the part of the reasons, hey, France going, we'll back out a little bit. We don't want to dilute Nissan anymore. You got it. We don't want to lose that. So we're going to back out. We're maybe drop our share a little bit in terms of ownership. That's their next move. But I think it's a strong play because they've proved the fact they can work with someone else. No one else has really proved it yet. There's a lot of silos out there where we don't know who else Chrysler would have to work with that would give them instant growth. Not now we got to figure this thing out together.
Who do you think, John? Renault?
For FCA
Yeah.
and merging, we'll see if they can put it back
or any
together.
merger for that matter. I mean, what do you see?
I don't see the need for mergers. I wish
Really?
what FCA would, what I wish the Detroit 3 would do is say, look, we're never going to design from scratch new ICE again. We're just not going to do it. Those days are over. We'll continue to improve. But if we're not going to have that, and it's no longer going to be a key differentiator, with a few exceptions, Hemi engines, LS1s, and that sort of thing. But who cares what 2-liter turbo is under the hood or 3-liter V6? The public doesn't know even the difference. They should just take their powertrain operations and spin them off as a separate company. And then let that company consolidate one family of 4s, one family of V6s, one family.
GM and Ford share transmissions. I mean, there's
but go whole hog.
Yes.
Just do the whole thing.
Yeah.
Boom. Outsource it. Each one of those companies would instantly free up several $1 billion to go play in autonomy or electrification. If they can't come to that, if I were Mike Manley, I'd go to General Motors and go, here. I give them to you.
Right.
Here are my 3 engine plants and my 2 transmission plants. They're yours. I will buy this stuff from you. Over time, you can bring it to your design. You'll build out what we're building now until the end of the life. Then you'll do your thing. But it's yours. And let's negotiate a 10-year contract. What a contract. 10 years.
Yeah.
So I'm going to buy these engines at this price. I'm going to buy these transmissions at that price. But now FCA, I'm out of the CapEx business of investing in traditional ICEs. I think there's a lot of ways to work it. And now you can still be totally independent, FCA, do your own thing with Ralph, Gilles coming up with these brilliant designs. Be your own thing. I don't see the need to mash these companies together.
Yeah, I like that. And that's innovative thinking that has to be really laid out there. So that's actually, I like that idea.
The only one for FCI I can think of is Hyundai, Kia, because the FCA has, Jeep and Ram, right? And what don't they have? They don't have trucks.
Yeah.
I mean, you could almost say the same thing for Honda, too. Although Honda's got enough crossovers that they don't really...
Honda is such a different company.
But yeah, the cultures, but the problem is the Korean culture and FCA would not work. The Japanese culture and FCA would not work. We're European and, because that has kind of worked for the last
for that one, I
years.
could see.
Yeah.
And Hyundai's going to need more capacity anyway. They're just gun shy to make any extra capacity in North America right now. I think they're a little concerned that They're just going to squeeze out their existing plants as much as they can.
What do you think about 25% tariffs on cars? Going to happen?
Look, political side, politics aside, I think the president's a businessman first and president second, right? And I think at the end of the day, on the paper, where if it's a threat that if you pay attention, it's going to go away. If you turn your back and say you're out of your mind, it's not going to go away. So pay attention to it. Put back, okay, no, this is the reason why this doesn't make any logical sense, and then he can walk out with, okay, maybe it was a bad idea, but I was proved it was, there's other factors in mind, not just, hey, screw you, you're crazy. Yeah. So I don't believe 25% of cars is going to be, I think it's insane. Yeah. It's insane. That's my take. I mean, I have another take on there, but.
And so does the Republican Party feel that way, so that's part of the
Yes.
impetus of why that probably won't happen. I mean, we saw that with the threatened Mexico tariff, right? Practically.
Well, that was a negotiating tactic.
Yeah, but
I
mean, the Republican Party came up pretty strong. The members of Congress were dead set against that,
right.
And there's obviously ways around them or Congress, but it was pretty clear that there was going to be some serious opposition within the party.
Most definitely. Hey, look, we ought to wrap it up. Great conversation.
Yeah, thanks.
Good stuff. Yeah, thanks you guys.
Thank
really
you.
good.
Thanks, John.